It's 1:35. We're going to get started with Environmental Matters Committee meeting. It's either the penultimate or perhaps the final of our meetings. As of now, it's the penultimate. And on that note, by the way, for everyone, our next meeting in October is currently scheduled for October 12th, not the 19th. I had previously moved it for an anticipated conflict on the 19th. So should we have that meeting, so noted. Okay. We only have a few things on the agenda today. We have minutes, we have clean energy loan program legislation, probably brief updates on the forest conservation projects, and then I asked for APF for school capacity to go on because I have some questions about implementation. Was anyone expecting Alderman Pfeiffer today? Anyone? Okay. I was waiting a few minutes to see if Alderman Pfeiffer would show, but I'm not seeing him, so I'll ask that we'll move on without him. Alderman Arnett, would you care to move the minutes?
Yes, I move approval of the minutes.
I second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Legislation before the committee, we have O3917, Clean Energy Loan Program. Thank you, Ms. Broadbent.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Maria Broadbent, Director of the Office of Environmental Policy. This legislation is a great opportunity for the city and for business owners. This allows business owners to apply for low interest, longer term loans for energy efficiency or energy improvement projects for their commercial properties. So the county has had this program for some time. You may remember that I think the origin of that was actually with the city many years ago, and then was taken over by Maryland Energy Administration and then delved out to the counties and the municipalities. So if you wanted to apply for a loan to add solar panels or to add insulation, and that could be an existing building or a building under construction. So it would require that you get an energy audit, but that could be rolled into the cost of the loan, and then you can pay for it over 20 or 30 years, and your payments would be made through your property tax bill. And then if you were to sell your property, the loan could transfer to the new owner. So this legislation just sets up an arrangement for the city to be able to piggyback on the project that the program that the county has administratively, and the city and the county will work together to help promote it and maybe provide some information to applicants for building permits and that sort of thing. We do have a green building requirement. This might help soften those requirements to some folks.
Thank you. I don't have questions about the underlying purpose or any argument that this is a good program. I do have questions about the legislation itself. Alderman, do you have questions you want to start with?
I do. I'll start with a comment and a question, and I'll have follow-ups after you do yours. But yay! I think this is great. But I was struggling with what is PACE. It's not in the legislation. It's in the write-up.
It is, and that was going to be on that. It might be your final quiz of this elected session for all the environmental acronyms that you can say that you know. It's Property Assessed Clean Energy.
Property Assessed Clean Energy.
So it sounds to me like they made it fit an acronym. But it's Property Assessed Clean Energy Financing.
Okay, well that's PACE. All right, I'll follow your lead on the questions you may already.
Well, help me understand the context, 'cause I thought this was a new program that the county already had, and the city's just adopting it, and the county's going to run it. So, but there's already apparently a program that currently existed that we're changing as opposed to adding a new program. So help me understand that.
So when you see our legislation, you see the strikeouts.
Yeah.
So years ago, we had a program that the city was working on putting together, and I want to say like 08, something way back when, and that's where that legislation that's being struck out came from. And I'm not sure that that program ever fully developed. It turned out that there were some questions that banking and financing folks had for whose lien was going to be in the first position that caused it to have to get enabling legislation. Sound familiar a little bit now? Yeah, it had to get enabling legislation, and then it ended up being taken over by the Maryland Energy Administration under O'Malley. But that is what the strikeout is referring to.
Okay. Was that program never funded? Is that what you're saying?
It never involved any funding anyway. It was a loan program, so people wouldn't have been borrowing from the city. They'd have been borrowing from a bank, but under a concept that the city was involved in.
Is there, moving on a little bit, getting to the eligibility portion of this, is there language in here that, and there must be, of what projects are included or not included, and how does this legislation land on what's included, what's not included?
As part of the application process. So when I talked to the gentleman at the county, he said all of that is in their application and their promotional material that talks about it, having to be $25,000 or more, and a renewable energy project, and there are certain criteria, and most of that is found actually on their website and all of the application materials.
And is it the county who decides whether to accept whether this is a project that is worth funding, or is it the city?
It actually would be the bank or the financing folks. The county just serves as a promotional entity.
Okay.
That all of the loans are actually through a company called Greenworks.
And if the county can't be required in this legislation to run the program, so if the county at some point did not want to run the program, would the city have the means of taking over? What would happen?
It wouldn't be an issue at all, because frankly the only thing that municipalities are doing is promoting and encouraging it. So
Okay.
the thing that the county is doing, that is the requirement of the MOU, is collecting the money through the property tax.
Okay.
So that's the most durable of the connection with the county.
Okay. Any questions, Alderman Art?
Yes, so I'm kind of curious, on page 2 of the legislation, it talks about renewable projects with an energy generation capacity of not more than 100 kilowatts. Why the limit?
Why is there a limit? I'm not really sure what the origin of that was. I guess, they're not looking to finance through, property tax bill project that's going to be generating enough power that it's a power plant. They're more looking to try and limit it to something that was scalable to an individual business, or something like a strip mall or the mall itself.
All right, so we're basically inheriting the language from either the state or the
Correct.
county.
And
Right.
just to give you some context for 100 kilowatts, the solar panels on my business's roof, I think, is about 20 kilowatts. I think, does that sound right?
That sounds about right. Yep.
Not mega, it would be kilo,
Right.
right? Yeah,
Right.
I sometimes forget the thousands. So if it gives you some context of size.
Right, but I don't understand why, if somebody wanted to put in a big one, we would care. I mean, like if you had panels on the Mapes building or something like
Right.
that, much bigger,
Yep.
it might well exceed this, and then they're not qualified.
It's just a guess on my part, but this required enabling legislation from the General Assembly, and I would guess that that's their definition. And whatever, excuse me, argument that they had at the time probably prevailed through this legislation.
Okay, well, there's some tortured language on the third page defining commercial property, which again, I guess we just inherit from the state, but it's not designed principally or intended for human habitation, but then they turn around and allow for properties that are human habitation as long as they're more than 4 family dwelling units.
So that makes it so that if you are, and that's a good thing, really, because what it does is make it so that places that are apartment complexes can qualify. Because if
Right.
they didn't add a limit, then they would just not be qualified. So it makes it so that some of those, Watergate, Severn House, some of those properties would be able to use this program.
But the quadruplex at South Annapolis Yachting Center would be excluded.
That's right.
All right.
Just the same as, some of the cutoffs for things like trash collection and other things.
And then on pages 4 and 5, which speaks to the question Alderman Littman asked, I think, which was what kinds of things. So we have solar energy equipment, geothermal, wind energy systems. Then there's water conservation devices not required by law. Just curious about what that might be.
Rain barrels.
That's it? Rain barrels?
Well, it could be that kind of best management practice, but water conservation, they're talking about tap water. So it could be something like having a gray water system installed. So you're using the rainwater you collect to flush your toilets and that sort of thing. So you'd be conserving water that you buy from the city by using rainwater for that purpose, or if you had a collection system with a cistern to collect rainwater to use for irrigation. That's
Okay.
the kind of thing they're talking about.
So I saw the staff report was written by Hollis, so I assume this is one of the byproducts of us having that joint appointment.
That's right.
Do we have any idea of how well, since it's already up and running in the county, how well it's working?
It's working remarkably well, but they haven't had any applicants. I think they had one that was interested who had, some other issues and ended up not going through the program. But it is, as good as it sounds, there have not been many takers. Even from the State Energy Administration, there have not been many takers. So it is something that I hear about a lot from the Environment Commission. One of the members has a big interest in seeing folks use this program, so I'm hoping maybe they might help to get the word out to people to encourage them to use it.
I wonder, since we have Pete and Sally here, if that's something that can be noted in the application process, that this PACE program is now part of availability to city people developing commercial or large scale. Yeah. So I wonder if that somehow we could make an amendment to this to the effect of having information regarding this part of the application, the city permit application process.
Mr. Gold, any comment on that?
Yeah. Right.
I don't know that you would need to do that through
Speak up, Will.
legislation.
Yeah, I don't know if you need legislation, but we can definitely do that as part of the promotional and application process. We always provide additional information, and we have notes on the applications for, like I said, the tax credit in the historic district. That's a note. If you're applying for it, please check here. Or if you're interested, please check here. We give people information on the tax credit program for that. All of this could easily be done as part of that application process. I don't know if it's, I don't think it's
So
legislative.
could we get an update on this sheet of all those people applying for the PACE, the energy? I
Just need bigger
suspect the reason
paper.
it's not used is it's not really well known. And I also suspect that once it becomes known, then more people will take advantage of it.
I would think you'd want to take advantage of it. We had a similar program in New England for residential folks that was through the power company, and it was a great program. I took advantage of it myself, and it was paid for through the electric bill over time. And I don't know, I think it's worth a try to see if we can promote it.
Yeah.
And, we do have a green building requirement that many communities don't have. And oftentimes we have folks get a little grumpy about that. So maybe this might be a way to help them over the hump with that.
I see we're not gonna have an Annapolis Environmental Commission update, but maybe this is something we can ask them to work on, is promoting it.
This would be a great thing for them to work on.
Yeah. I have no other questions.
Here comes those phones.
I have no further questions.
I would move we make a recommendation to the council for approval.
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed?
Yep.
None abstaining? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Pete, Mr. Gutwald, at your pleasure, if you want to do forest conservation projects and then APF?
Sure. I'll start with the update on plans. Since the last time, I think there's two major updates that I'll highlight, and then if there's any questions the committee has, I'll be more than willing to answer. 2010 West Street, we received an FSD, but a further update since the end of August is that we've actually received the application for that. It's 42 homes with some non-residential, about 2,000 square feet of non-residential on the first floor. It's in the BCE. This is in front of the Capitol building on West Street. Actually, access is onto Capitol Drive. We did approve the FSD at this point. There were some problems with it, and we did approve the FSD to that one at this point in time. That's a further update to that one. And then I think the last time I was here, I had not received the Village of Providence Point, and I reported to you that I had not received that. About 2 days after that, we received the application for that. You may have known, read in the papers, that there was a number of issues with that. We've deemed it incomplete. The Forest Conservation Plan, the application, a lot of, you could see all the different categories of the special exception was deemed incomplete. So we're waiting for a bunch of different information at this point in time. A lot of holes, a lot of things we couldn't decipher out of the plan. We have met with their representatives since and kind of went through the litany of things, and that's kind of where we stand right now for that property.
Do you, my biggest concern about that, my biggest concern about that application continues to be that if their application is approved, it does not speak to whether they could then come back at a later point to do a next phase on the north side of that property, where Hilltop and Spa meet, essentially. That whole corner, which is didn't look like it was part of the conservation easement, the 75 acres, not part of the build out, and so it's still TBD.
A lot of questions. Yep, had the same questions.
And so I guess my concern is whether or not that would be a barrier for you, or would you just are you just asking for questions on the piece of land that
We're
they're trying to
trying
build
to figure
on?
out what the subdivision was. The subdivision plan itself did not make any sense. It created basically landlocked properties, landlocked parcels or lots. There are a lot of questions. Even the attorney who came in says he couldn't answer the questions either. So a lot of questions. Where was the easements? Where was the 75 acres? Where was the forest? It looked like the forest conservation was spread throughout the plan. A lot of questions from staff that just, it was very difficult to ascertain what they were trying to do and what was being retained as forest and what was being the 75 acres and all of that.
Is there a scenario where you would allow the 75 acres to be split up into it has to be contiguous, right?
Yes, that was specifically stated in our comments back to them. Yes.
So it has to be 75 contiguous attached
Acres.
pieces. And would you allow that north half of that property to be unaddressed?
Well, no, if you say the north half, I'm thinking there's about 18-acre lot that they...
Yeah, it's sort of angled like that. So and the road right now goes right through the middle from Forest Drive.
Uh-huh.
And their whole development is on the south side of that angled piece.
Right.
So I'm talking about
Yes,
above the road.
that is the remaining lands.
It's
There'll
what
be
lands?
about, right now we're defining it as remaining lands.
Remaining land, okay.
So that would be it's about an 18-acre area, 11 developable. That would be open for more development at this point in time. Yeah, there's that, but the remaining of that they're taking up, I don't know, somewhere around 40 acres, I think it was, 30-some acres, and the other part would be in forest conservation and/or an easement, and that easement. So there is about an 11-acre, or 18-acre piece of land that it looks like, yes, that would be for future development of some point in time.
And there's no way through this process that they couldn't be forced to commit to put that in an easement?
Not really, because if they're meeting the code requirements of forest and that's 75 acres, I don't know how you would, you
Right.
know,
Okay.
yeah.
So, yeah, are all of these parcels, I thought there was a parcel along Spa Road that was owned by owned by Allen Hyatt. Is
And that's
that
on
the
Forest
case?
Drive. It's along Forest Drive, but before the
Yeah.
turn into Spa.
My
Right.
understanding is we need
So
to.
that can always come back to either be
No,
commercial
that's part
or
of this.
townhouse?
No, that's part of this proposal.
It is part
It
of
is
this
part of this
proposal.
proposal.
All right,
Yeah.
all right.
So, yeah, or the Compass Rose Theater.
Yeah.
And then there was
It's
at
part
one
of it.
point a mythical agreement to put some part of the forest land into a permanent easement. Is that in play anymore?
Well, there's the 75 acres that would be a conservation easement, and then there's the forest conservation, which cannot be, that is sort of goes on the recorded plat as protected for forest conservation, so.
Well, this is certainly topical because it's been discussed at every debate I've been to so far.
Yeah.
Mr. Gutwald, can you, just for our edification, help us understand how the new Forest Conservation Act, including no net loss, has changed your department's review of this parcel? Has it helped? Has it not made any difference? When I say helped, has it had any impact?
Sure, I mean, there's definitely with the no net loss, I mean, and some of the things that the other, like even like 39 Hudson, they're going above and beyond what they're necessarily required to do for a lot of different environmental purposes and forest conservation. But I mean, there's only been I don't know if it's really changed much in terms of additional forest, because a lot of them were just catching up. A lot of the developments really there wasn't much forest conservation to them to begin with, like the parking lot at 9, what was it, off of West Street. There's a couple of different small developments that it didn't have that big of an impact thus far. Some redevelopment projects. So off the top of my head, anecdotally, I don't know if it's made a big difference, but our review, I mean, the process has changed. I think it's opened it up a little more. We have our public meetings. They're not well attended, but the people that are interested do show up. I mean, they're not huge, numbers that are coming out to them. Like the library, that was a very minimal forest conservation plan. They were doing probably more than that they were expected to do, because that was a redevelopment project, that kind of stuff. So.
What about this property?
Yeah, this has made a big difference on this property. There's
Help me understand how.
host. Well, the whole backside of where they, could develop originally, they have since, for a long time since I've been here, they have agreed not to go below that intermittent stream. So, but now that'll be part of the forest conservation. I mean, the no net loss, meeting their requirements for that. So I think that has been an impact. I mean, it's not a question of whether you can go below that intermittent stream. You have to, to meet your forest conservation requirements, you're going to have to keep that area in force. Even though they kind of, over the years, from my understanding, have agreed to do all that kind of stuff. So yeah, from a regulatory standpoint, it's made it easier to tell them you have to do this. There's no question of whether you can go below the intermittent stream or not. You can't, because you got to meet your forest conservation requirements. So.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Broadbent, did you want to add anything on forest conservation, about the manual or anything else?
Like I mentioned to you before the meeting, we heard back from our contact at DNR after we had sent the manual, I don't know, March or April or something, and heard back from her that she wanted it in a version that wasn't showing track changes in order for her to review it. And I got a couple of comments pertaining to maybe the first 3 or 4 pages, things like make sure we're giving the proper credit for whoever drew the drawings and the figures, but requesting that I send it back to her in a version that wasn't in track changes, and that then she would review it. So we've essentially been using the manual because of course, everything corresponds with the ordinance. So we're just waiting for their review.
My recollection is that the legislation did not require council approval of any changes in the manual, but it did require this committee to be made aware of changes.
Correct.
And I don't think we've had that meeting, and maybe you want to wait till DNR approves it, but just want to put that in the back of both of your radar.
I think it was a notification. Our changes, we didn't have any changes to the manual that were anything other than corresponding with the new ordinance.
I think we were supposed to go to the planning commission and this committee and the council for,
FYI.
yeah, to have,
Yeah.
to send it, to give it to you.
Yes.
Right.
So, we need to do that.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying is make us.
Yeah, we need to do it. I think we wanted to get the feedback.
Sounds like a good topic to cover with the new committee, because clearly it'll be at least two-thirds, hopefully no more than two-thirds different. But it'll be different nonetheless, and so it might be a good way to get the new committee up to speed on that topic.
It's probably a good idea. Probably take that long from
Yeah, I agree.
experience. Get
I
it
agree.
back from them.
Right, just trying to think ahead to what's coming up. All right, that's all I have on that topic. Okay, no update from the AEC, and so we'll move right along to ID 31117, adequate public facilities for school capacity. Another one, we just want to see how things were going, and it was important legislation to the committee.
I'm gonna let Sally take this one, take the lead on this one, and I'll just fill in.
Good afternoon, Sally
Good
Nash.
afternoon.
Well, you've seen the chart. I added a more detailed chart besides just saying which schools were open and closed. So you can see the numbers behind that. We have 2 elementary school districts that are closed, Mills Parole and Tyler Heights. That might change once we get the enrollment numbers for Monarch Academy, but we won't have those until December, January. So we have one development that's been impacted by the closure of Tyler Heights. That's the Central Park project off Hilltop at Elliott Road, the 45 townhomes, and 2010 West will also be impacted by the closing at Mills Parole.
Which was the other one?
The 2010 West Street project.
That didn't get excluded from one of the exclusions in the beginning of the ordinance?
I don't think this was, you mean in the design district or whatever?
Yeah,
Excluded
exactly.
arts and entertainment.
Yeah, but I
Did
don't know
we
if that, is that,
exclude- I don't think we
Yeah,
excluded,
exclusion
there was
D.
discussion of excluding Upper West Street, but that didn't get into the final ordinance.
Okay. Yeah, right, we just have Main Street here, and the Arts and Entertainment District. Okay. Anything else you'd like to present on this?
well, I think what you wanted, the question was, is how we were applying the new developments, the certificate of adequacies, and how that was being rolled into the projections. As they come online and they either make application and or have a certificate of adequacy, they're added to the 3rd year projection into the enrollment to determine whether it's open or closed. If they are over a year old or already have approval and they're over a year old, we check with the school board. They roll those numbers into their projections as well. So you'll see that those ones, like Parkside Preserve, has been rolled into their projections or roll them along. That may be the case. So they are counted. So we're not adding that, and we're not double counting them.
Mm-hmm.
So we're checking that 3rd year with anything that has certificate of adequacy. As was the question in looking at whether it's meeting or not meeting, or whether development can move forward, or it's over the 105 or 120% capacity.
So here's my biggest concern, and it's the use of the word open for status, because we had a distinction in our ordinance from the county version. What the county does to say open and closed, that's county terminology, and if it's open, with one seat open, it's open for 20 new kids.
Right.
This
That's
is
not the case.
That's
right?
not the case in the city.
Correct.
So
Yeah, they get, when a
I
new
think-
application comes in, we then go through the run the numbers again, so that's a good point. Maybe we shouldn't say that.
that's
We
my
should just put-
suggestion is closed, so you have too many kids, although it might be helpful to know how many kids in case they want to mitigate with new facilities. So maybe closed with -5 or whatever the number is. But for open, I think is my main point. It shouldn't be open. It should be 5 seats, 10 seats, whatever the number is, so that the new units, the new number of units, when you apply the calculations, which you helpfully provided here, the calculation times the units gives you the number of seats that
Gotcha.
are. So
We can do that.
I think that would calm some concerns out in the community that it's just being labeled open as, like the county is open.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah,
that's my
good point.
biggest issue, so I appreciate your willingness to consider that. I know Alderman Arnett had some concerns.
Well, no, actually, I was kind of interested, I know Jessica Packler wanted to be here. There are lots of problems with the redistricting, but I don't think it's the adequacy of public facilities. So I don't know why she wanted.
I think the concern I articulated was also her concern.
Okay, good, all right, so we've covered it.
Yeah, I believe so, so if we
That's-
haven't, I'll hear about
Yeah.
it.
I mean, I read the emails, that's what she was getting at. Are we, taking into account?
I think so
Yeah.
too.
Right.
The other one, no, this is not a rhetorical question, it's an innocent question. On page 9 of the legislation, where we get to things that it's actually, the legislation is here if you want to look at it, but it's the part where it says the school capacity, starts on page 8, the school capacity used in the school utilization chart shall include the following, and it's a pretty obvious list of things, no surprises, but the last piece is, does not include capacity based on temporary or relocatable structures, the trailers.
Correct.
I don't think the county includes that either, so your numbers probably should match the county's on that, but is that accurate? Are you able
Should.
to make sure you're not including the trailers as providing capacity?
The school board doesn't include the capacity.
Does
of
or
the
does
does not include the trailers in their capacity of a building.
Okay, I didn't think so.
Yeah, so in
Right.
their master facilities plan, that just reflects the permanent structure.
Right,
And they give us their capacity numbers. We don't calculate capacity.
and so you're able to, because like I said, I didn't know whether for sure they exclude it, you're able to rely on the school telling you what their capacity limits are because they also don't include the trailers.
Correct.
Okay, like I said, innocent question, just didn't know the answer. Those are my questions. Anything else you want to ask about? Alderman Becker?
No, I think it's helpful to have this chart in this framework, and I think that question about how many seats is, you can sort of rough it out by the percentages, but it would be helpful to have that as well, because that should be part of the conversation in the community going forward. So, thank you. I think this is great having, especially the projections of the projects, and so it's
Do
good.
you want us to continue to send it to you?
Yeah, please do.
The projects that you list on the right, those are approved projects or not? They're not approved, right? Because I know Lost at Eastport Mining is not approved.
No.
Those are just hypothetical, what might be.
141 recently got approved this month, but right, the other ones haven't.
These are the ones where either are requesting a certificate of adequacy or have a certificate of adequacy, yeah.
In the case of the Lost at Eastport, it's requesting, they don't have one yet.
Correct.
Okay. Keep on turning off my mic. Thank you.
Okay.
Unless anyone else has anything else, I think that might conclude our business.
I'm done, I'm good, unless you want to hear the horror stories of the redistricting.
I don't think I do. Anything else, Ms. Broadbent?
Forest Drive, sector study, want an update?
What's that?
Oh, yeah, the Forest Drive.
Oh, sector study, yeah.
Good.
We have our public house, public meeting / open house on September 27th. That's from 6:30 to 8:30 at the Pitt Moyer Recreation Center. We got a banner hung up in front of the fire station on Forest Drive, but when I drove by it yesterday, I realized it was like this big. It looks so much bigger in my office.
Yeah,
But,
we've been there, don't worry.
And we're also continuing to meet monthly with the Planning Commission on the third Wednesday of the month. We're meeting with them next week to talk about transportation issues. And we're working on getting our website up before the public meeting, so it will mirror what we will be doing at the public meeting. So if someone could not come to the public meeting, they can have access to all the same materials, hopefully a week in advance, to make comments on them. Or if they just want to see the materials before they come to the public meeting, they can do that too.
Thank you. I personally will be out of town, so I will not be able to be there, but I know you've been advertising it well. I've been seeing it frequently, so I'm pleased to see that.
Great. Yeah, our survey got over 1,000 responses, so that's
Someone did send me a clip of the businesses that you go to chart that made me happy.
True
to see,
Value was
so
very popular, yes.
I appreciate seeing that. Well, if this is our last meeting, I just want to say that I think we have done a lot, and that any accomplishments that this committee has, built on past work, frankly, often by the two of my colleagues, Alderman Arnett and Alderman Pfeiffer. In particular, I'm thinking of the Forest Conservation Act. I know you put a lot of time into that before we got into this term. Certainly, the three of you have been helpful, as have on occasion Director Gerald has been here occasionally, and of course Mr. Miller. And so I appreciate the support. There's the environmental issues touch almost everything else, as we all know, in this room. So I think it's important work. I'm sure or I encourage you to take the time to train the new committee on what the important questions are, what the important issues are, because it's kind of took a while to figure out what to ask about, frankly. So I just encourage you to be forthcoming and say, here's what you should be asking us about, and help them along in that sense. And I hope Alderman Arnett is here to lead that effort, but it's not one person's job.
It is the continuity of the bureaucracy that makes government work. We come and go, but
Right.
they're the ones that make it happen.
Absolutely. So I just want to express my appreciation for everyone here, council, and of course everyone here for the staff.
Thank you. All right.
All right.
I had one more thing I wanted to share with you, and I'll pass this around, maybe send it via email so Takia gets it for the record too. And October 5th, we are having the open house to talk about the next of the stream restoration projects that's going to be behind the Housing Authority in Eastport, on property that's owned by the Housing Authority and the City of Annapolis, and a little bit of Spa Cove Apartments. But this is just an opportunity for folks to come and learn a little bit more about that project. I want to make sure that everybody's fully aware of the trucks coming through the road and what to expect during the construction and those kinds of things. But you're all invited. I think many of you actually came to the last one we did, which is for the Spa Creek Headwaters project that we are finishing up right now. That project is almost finished. We're about ready to do the punch list. The only other thing I wanted to mention to you is...
when is that and where is it, on the 5th?
It's on October 5th at the Eastport Fire Station at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
And this letter is going out to everyone in the Housing Authority property, as well as the residents of Spa Cove Apartments, the other complex that's right before Spa Cove on that same road as you go to Truxton Park. So we had a pretty widespread mailing that should have gone out to people for this one. And the only other thing I wanted to mention to you is tonight is the Lions for the Chesapeake Bays annual big celebration. And Betsy Love, who has been our contact and been to this meeting on several occasions from St. Luke's Church, she is the one who took it up as a little pet project, is receiving their Person of the Year award. So that's kind of a big deal from an organization that covers all 5 of the Chesapeake Bay states in the district.
Okay. It's a big deal, and she's a good person. Too bad I'll be debating at the
Tonight.
Eastport Civic Association.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you've had a chance to drive by, it's going like gangbusters. It's really cool.
They are ahead of schedule
Yeah.
on that project, making up for our permitting
And
time, I think.
kudos to Maria because she has been buffering the project. There are some concerns coming from Severn House, and the concerns seem to continue to repeat even after they've been answered. And I think Maria has quelled those concerns to a considerable degree. And I go by there about every other day, and I see a lot of other people walking by and looking at it. So I think it's going to have a big impact.
It's rare that we get to do one of those projects that's right there where you can see it.
Yeah.
You know, I have told them that they should probably cordon off a little area where people can stand and watch the machinery, that
Yep.
walking around in the construction isn't the best way to see it, but it's really obvious from the road. We are going to have a day or two where we're going to have a traffic restriction on Bay Ridge when we do the work to actually capture the water from the manhole on Bay Ridge, but we'll make sure that we get the word out when that happens.
It's in vogue in Eastport. Every street is torn up.
Yeah, right, I think they should do it now and
Right.
could just say it was the gas company or something.
Yeah, right. There you go.
But, you know, whether we meet in October or not, my thanks to all of you. We have a lot of legislation and a lot of different topics and covered a lot of territory in the last 4 years, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Rory.
I think we morphed a lot, very much to the betterment. And I may be joining my two colleagues, we don't know, but if not, I certainly have enjoyed working with you. And you can stop by every once in a while and see how the new group goes. I don't even know what committee I'll be on if I'm reelected, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think especially with so much turnover as we will have no matter what, they'll certainly loosen the finance chair, environmental chair, and housing chair. There'll be even if all the incumbents stay put, that's a fair bit of change. So
Yep.
good luck to you.
Thank you.
I've enjoyed it as well. Thanks for your support, encouragement.
So I'm not ready to say goodbye yet. I figure we'll save that for future council meetings, and I'm sure we'll find something to meet again in October, knowing
All right.
staff to bring us something. But no, I of course share the. So Maria, we've worked with you the 8 years I've been here on a variety of issues, and it's been a pleasure. You've always been wonderful to deal with, and sometimes complicated, difficult times. So I appreciate that. But
Yeah. Ditto.
Move we adjourn?
second.
We're adjourned.